a real simple message and a real simple thought, but it's very powerful. And next week we're going to start in a series leading up to Easter. And on that note, be prayerful and be mindful about who you have in your life that you might could reach out and invite to Easter, because people will come on Easter when they won't come any other day. And we're going to start a series just going through the text and leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus and talking about that. But this morning, I want to just, I titled this Moments with Our Father. And I just wanted to communicate a real simple truth. And it's no secret, like we live in the age that we live in a wonderful time where we have access to so many helpful resources in our lives. I mean, there are so many ways that we can get help and aid and care and assistance. We have more assistance and help available to us now than probably any other time in history. I mean, we have, if you need food, food's available. If there's government assistance for those on disability, for those who need jobs, for housing, there's medical breakthroughs that have made us live longer and live healthier. They say 60's the new 30 now. I mean, we just live, some of y'all are 60 are like, well, nobody told me, because I'm feeling it every year. But that's what they say. I mean, technology has we lived in a much more advanced society that we have so many things available to us, and it's wonderful. But I just want to tell you this morning that there is a resource that has been and is still available to us that we can go to. And it has never changed. And He is still the greatest place that we can go to for help. And that is, and it sounds so simple, but it's powerful, it's profound, it's life-changing. And that's simply that we can go to our Father. We can go to Him. It's not to say that all the help that the world offers is no good. It is good. But I'm saying there is a help that is sure, that has never changed, that we can count on. And it's the best help. And it's to go to Him. So Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30. This is Jesus speaking, and He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened." He says, "I'll give you rest. Take my yoke on you and learn from me. For I'm gentle, I'm humble in heart. And when you do, you will find rest for your souls." Jesus says, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Thank you, Jesus. Let's go to Him in prayer one more time. Jesus, we thank you for the invitation that we read in Matthew 11, that we can come to you. My prayer is we would do that we would take you up on this offer to come to you. We don't begrudge all of the available resources that we have to represented and given to us, but don't ever let us forget that we can come to you. Don't ever let us make the mistake of not coming to you, Jesus. So this morning, for the hurting, for those who are weary, for those whose minds are racing out of control from one thought to the next, and they feel like they're spinning out of control, we run to you. For those who are weary from carrying the burdens that life has laid on their shoulders. Burdens that we didn't choose. Burdens that you didn't count or plan on. Burdens that you didn't plan for. We run to you. Jesus, for those who are sick in body and are struggling and are enduring pain, we run to you. For those whose most intimate and important relationships are broken and we feel lost and we don't know where to turn, we run to you. We thank you, Jesus, that we can come to you and we can find rest in your name. Amen and amen. I'm just so moved by that scripture and that invitation that Jesus gives us, because it still stands, by the way. It stands. The invitation that Jesus extends to all of us still stands this morning. We can come to him. And as I was thinking about that, somebody came to my mind, and he is my favorite Bible character. I have preached on him a lot, and that will probably never end. But I couldn't help but think of the life of David. Now, David lived before Jesus in the old covenant, but David had this supernatural, seemingly prophetic revelation of the grace of God that was to come. So somehow I think David reached forward into God's time clock and snatched out the grace of God and pulled it into his life as his own reality. If you'll read some of the Psalms he wrote, they should be in the New Testament because they reveal God's grace and mercy. And yet he lived in a very barbaric old covenant age. And so I was just thinking about, just simply going through and thinking about David's life. And most of you know, or at least familiar with the timeline of his story. We see David first appear. He's the youngest of Jesse's sons, and the prophet comes to Jesse's house, led by God, to anoint Israel's next king. And you know how the story goes. Jesse gets all of his boys in. These strapping men, handsome and strong, and he stands them before the prophet. And the prophet goes through them one by one, all 7 sons, and he's not led to anoint any of them until the prophet has to ask Jesse. I mean, he has to ask for the boy. Do you have any more sons? Jesse goes, well, yeah, I got this one kid. He's out keeping the sheep. I mean, how much mental disparity and damage does that do to a son? To know your daddy didn't even consider you as an option. That he didn't even go to the trouble to bring you in from the field when the man of God showed up at the house. He left you out there in the cold keeping sheep while he paraded all 7 of your brothers to be chosen. Like what kind of damage to your image does that do as a young boy? So David, no doubt, is dealing with that whole debacle with him and his dad. I mean, how do you as a son forgive your dad? I can't believe you didn't even think of me, Dad. I mean, I'm out there doing the work and you just don't even think, you don't even give me a chance. No doubt he lives with that. And that's repeated over and over and over in his mind throughout his life. David finally makes it to the palace, but only as a musician, and he's brought in to play for Saul. And even though he's made it to the palace, he gets there, and the troubles are just beginning for David. He gets to the palace, and I mean, I know we're aware and sensitive of workplace harassment, but David suffers workplace harassment like nobody's ever seen. I mean, when you go into work and the boss is throwing spears at you, trying to assassinate you, in my book, that qualifies as workplace harassment, right? I mean, like, you need to Like, that's not a safe place. That's not what we call a safe work environment. But that's David's first job out of his house. Is he goes to the courts, he's a musician, and the king is trying to kill him. So the troubles don't end for David. So he thinks, well, I know how I'll fix this. I'll put an end to this. I'll marry the king's daughter, because, as you know, marriage fixes everything, right? So he marries Saul's daughter, who only spends her life, the rest of her days, despising him and criticizing him publicly. I mean, you know, it's one thing for your spouse to say it in the privacy of your bedroom, and tell you what's wrong with you and tell you how you need to change. It's a whole different thing when they criticize you publicly, right? But that's David's life. That's his marriage. There was a point where, in leading some of Saul's campaigns, David was captured by the Philistines. David resorts to, now this is the same David who the prophet Samuel said, you will be king of Israel one day. He stoops so low while in captivity of the enemy. He resorts to, and he goes to the lengths of pretending like he's crazy. Like he pretends like he's a madman. Frothing and saliva running down his beard. He acts so crazy that they just say, get him out of here. We don't want anything to do with this crazy man. That's part of David's story. Like, you're in a bad way when you have to, anybody ever had to go to those lengths to get out of a pinch? Like, you're in a pinch when you've got to stoop so low as to act like a madman. But that's part of David's story. Pretending to be insane. He escapes, and things seem like they start to turn for David. He gathers around him some of the toughest, strongest, most battle-hardened, rowdiest men throughout the countryside, and they become known as his mighty men. And they run victorious battle campaigns for King Saul all throughout the countryside. They expand Israel's territory. I mean, they are a fierce force to be reckoned with. And these men are loyal to David. He gives them purpose. He gives them something to live for and even something to die for. Until one day, they come back to where they had established their homes in Ziklag, and the Amalekites had snuck around the back door and burned all their homes and taken their women and their children captive. And they're crying, and David's mighty men have gone from robust, gallant, strong men of courage to crying like babies, because their wives and their children are now captives of the enemy. Their homes are burned. What happens to David? They turn on him. And they consider killing him. The men that you've fought with, that you've bled with, the men that you've stood back to back and fought off the enemy. Like, there is a bond that is formed during wartime that only soldiers can appreciate and understand. That's what David had with these men, and now they're turning their backs on him. They're ready to kill him simply because he might have made a mistake. And this is David's life. This is the course. These are the things he has to deal with. He later, Samuel's prophecies become true. He later does become king. He establishes his throne in Jerusalem. Once that happens, it's like the enemy shifts and starts to come at David in a different way. Here's how the enemy starts to play the game with David. David's on the rooftop one day when he should be out leading his men in battle. He's on the rooftop. The enemy changes tactics. And he sees a woman taking a bath across the way. And she catches his eye. You see how the enemy changes tactics during a different season in his life. And David falls to temptation, has her husband assassinated. And it doesn't stop there for David. But the old prophet Nathan in the courts of the king points a little bony finger in the face of the king and says, "You are the man," and calls him out through the spirit of prophecy, the sins of the king. Like, it never ends for David. I mean, it just goes on and on. Trouble after trouble, heartache after heartache, trial after trial. It just seems like it never ends for him. Of all that he's been through, he finally gets to the throne, and this happens. He falls to sin, and it becomes a public spectacle. It doesn't end there. His daughter is raped by a son. Another son, who is the half-brother, gets so angry that their father won't do anything about it. He's soft on the matter. So Absalom decides he's going to take it into his own hands and kills his half-brother who raped his sister, because dad wouldn't do anything about it. Then the son who takes out vengeance on the half-brother decides, you know what, I handled that pretty well. Like, I did a pretty good job with that. And dad's just over there tiptoeing through the flowers while his family's falling apart. I'm here holding the house down and taking care of business. I should be king. And Absalom begins to roam the countryside and win the hearts of the people. And he gathers an army to himself, and he leads a coup against his own father, David. I mean, it goes from bad to worse for him, doesn't it? Until David finds himself walking out of Jerusalem, walking away from his throne, the throne that was promised him, in retreat from his own son. Don't you know, in all of those low points in his life, he never forgot the day when his father didn't call him in. He never forgot about every low point, every time that trouble came his way. I'm sure the enemy brought up the fact that Jesse wouldn't even bring you to be viewed and selected by the prophet. He didn't even consider you. You don't belong here. What kind of king are you? Acting like a madman, frothing in the floor. You're no kind of king. That's why your father didn't pull you out to be picked. Who do you think you are, wearing the throne of Israel, sitting in a palace? You're no kind of king. Your father was right. He should have never brought you in from the field. What kind of king are you? Your family's falling apart. Your son's raping your daughters. Your other son's killing the son who did that. You can't even keep your house together. You're no kind of king. You never should have been called in from the field. Don't you know that every mistake, every low point, every dark place that he had to walk through, that was repeated in his mind over and over and over? You're no kind of king. Jesse should have left you in the field keeping sheep. David should have given up. I mean, if I were David, I would have given up on the prophecy spoken on my life a long time ago. I think I would have been happy just to stop believing, stop dreaming, stop trying, and just blend in and be another face in the crowd. Because I am so tired of fighting these battles. I am so tired of walking through these troubles. God, just let me blend in and be another face in the crowd. Forget the prophecies, forget the promises, forget all that the prophet said. I just want to blend in. I just want to be normal. Like when I read his story, I'm thinking that's the way I want to go. There's no way I would want to have to deal with all that David dealt with. He should have went crazy. We call it PTSD now. No doubt he suffered from that at extremely high levels. He should have caved to his critics. He should have surrendered all of his hopes and dreams. And yet David does one thing every time the clouds start to swell over his life. Every time it gets dark. Every time he messes up. David does one thing every time he finds himself in a pinch. When he was running from Saul during that season of workplace harassment. He wrote Psalm 18. Psalm 18 says this: the cords of death entangled me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. But the Lord is my rock, my fortress, my strong deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield, and he is the horn of my salvation. That's what David did when he was being attacked in the workplace. When he pretended to be insane, writhing in the floor like a madman when the Philistines held him as a captive, he wrote Psalm 34. And he said, this poor man called, and the Lord heard him, and he saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. When David fell into sin with Bathsheba and was called out by the prophet Nathan, he didn't have the prophet killed. He did the same thing. He wrote a psalm. He went to God and he writes this. And this psalm was written, this was not a song that he wrote to keep in his private journal for no one to read. Psalm 51 was a song written to the chief musician of Israel. In other words, David writes this song about his own sin to be sung throughout the nation by the choirs of Israel. A king who has thrown himself on the mercies of God when he's fallen into sin writes, have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. Against you and you only have I sinned and done evil in your sight. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a right spirit in me. When David was on the run from his son Absalom, who was leading a coup against his crown, he wrote Psalm 3. Lord, how many are my foes? How many are they that rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me. You are the glory and the lifter of my head. And I just want to share this simple truth with you this morning. That no matter where you find yourself, no matter what you're facing, no matter what the enemy is telling you in your mind, no matter what kind of obstacle you face, there is a place that we can run to. There is a Father that we can go to. Don't ever forget that we can run to our Father just like David did. I mean, I don't know if anybody's facing the obstacles that he faced, but listen, he wasn't successful and he didn't become Israel's greatest king because of his stature. He didn't become Israel's greatest king because he was so rich or famous or powerful. He became Israel's greatest king because he knew where to go when times got tough. And I just simply want to encourage you this morning that you have a place to go when times get tough. There is a Father whose arms are open for you that you can run to, and you can find healing. You can find an identity. I know you've got all kind of issues. Your family of origin was all jacked up and you weren't loved like you were supposed to have been loved. You didn't get enough hugs and affirmation growing up. But listen, your dad didn't leave you out in the field when the prophet came by to choose a king. I mean, we've all got stuff. That's what the Father is for. No matter how good your parents are, they're not perfect. That's why we have a Father that we can go to. He's perfect. He will heal our hearts. He will give us the identity that we're looking for, the fulfillment and the acceptance that our heart longs for. You'll only find it in Him. You can go to Him. So I just want to encourage you this morning, never forget. You have a place you can go to. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't let life beat you down. Jesus said, come unto me if you're weary, if you're burdened, if you're tired of carrying this weight, Don't give up. Go to him. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. You will find rest for your souls. David knew this. Every time he got in a pinch, he would go to God and he would find strength. He would find deliverance. He would get a word. He would remember who he was. He would remember the prophecy. He remembers his destiny. He remembers his future. And then he gets up and he keeps on going. We have to find that place in God. You can't find it anywhere else. I mean, I thank God there's all kinds of help in the world. I thank God for doctors and medicine who can heal our bodies. I thank God for counselors who can help us navigate broken relationships. I thank God for resources that we have for provision in life. But at the end of the day, your best bet and your best help is to go to God. He's got everything you need. Don't ever forget that's a source you always have. You can go to him. If you need forgiveness, go to him. If you need healing, go to him. I just feel like in my heart there's so many people who you struggle with your identity. Maybe it was because of how you were treated as a kid, and there's just turmoil that just rages inside of your belly, and it comes out in so many different kinds of ways for different people. But can I tell you, there is a place that you can find in God, and there is nothing like when you feel the smile of your Heavenly Father on your life. That war ceases. That turmoil, it just dies. And you find an identity in him, and he calls you son, or he calls you daughter. What Paul wrote when he says that we are adopted, it becomes real for you. That he chooses you. You weren't born into this. You didn't deserve this. He chooses you. And he brings you into his family. But it ends that rage that's stirring in your gut. That's what I'm saying. It's like I'm afraid so many people spend their whole lives working and trying and fighting, suppressing, going to church, serving, doing good works. But at the end of the day, have you gone to your Father? Have you sat at his feet and heard him call your name and felt his embrace and found acceptance from him and felt the full satisfaction of his unfailing love poured over your heart? That's what I'm talking about. I'm going to get ready to close. And my heart's prayer this morning is, I just want this for you, and I never want it to dry up for me. We can go. We have a Father that we can run to. And he knows what we need. Amen? He knows what we need. Would you stand to your feet this morning as we get ready to close? He knows. He's so good. You're so good, God. Father, we thank you that because of Jesus, we have open access to come to you. God, I just feel compelled to pray a prayer of repentance, Father. Forgive us, Lord, when we have not come to you, when we've gone the other way. We believe the lie that you're mad and you're done with us. The lie that says that we've fallen so many times that your frustration has reached a boiling point towards us to where you won't accept us anymore. What a lie. What a lie. There's no sin. There's no number of sins that's stronger than the blood of Jesus. And because this is based on Jesus' blood, we know that the invitation stands. We can come to you. And God, when we come to you, there's really nothing we can bring, nothing we can offer. We don't come to you bearing gifts. Most of the time we come to you broken, a mess, a wreck. Most of the time when we come to you, it's because we're in trouble or we're hurting, we're confused. We got to admit, God, that most of the time when we run to you, we're running from something. But I thank you so much, Father, that your mercies are sure. Your love is unfailing. You're just glad we're running. You said if we would draw near to you, that you would draw near to us. And so, Father, I know there's people in this room this morning who could use a touch, who could use an encounter with you. There are people in this room this morning, God, who need to take a step and come and just sit at your feet for a moment and find what David found when his family was fighting and he couldn't bring peace. He ran to you. When he was running for his life, he ran to you. When he had fallen headlong into sin, he ran to you. Every time, God, he ran to you. And he found a shelter. He found restoration. He found redemption. God, I know there are people in this house. They need to run to you. Relationships at home are so touchy. It's like walking on eggshells. We need to run to you. Some of us have messed up doing the same thing so many times, but we need to run to you, God. So, Father, as we get ready to just sing this song, I pray that you would open up your arms to those in this room who need to come to you this morning. If you're here this morning and you feel God just compelling you that he's got something for you, maybe you've been fighting, been battling it out with the world and the devils around you, and you're tired of fighting it, I want to invite you as we sing this song to just come and kneel at these altars. We're not going to ask to pray for you this morning because I feel like this is between you and the Father. This is something only he can give if you'll seek him for it. We're going to sing this song. And if you're here and you need a touch from your Father, you need him to heal your heart. You need to feel the acceptance and the word of approval over your life that only comes from him, the satisfaction and fulfillment for your heart. I want to invite you to come this morning as we sing. Step out from where you are and come. Let's just spend a moment at the Father's feet saying, God, I need you. God, I'm here. I may be here again and again and again, but I need you this morning. That's it. Don't hesitate. Just make your way down here to the front. This is a time for you and the Father, for you to just come and kneel at his feet and receive healing, receive peace. For you to come down and all of those things that you're carrying, just to bring them down here. Maybe as you step out of your seat, you walk down. When you kneel down, it's just a symbol of you laying down the burdens and the cares of life that have left you exhausted. God bless you. God bless you as you come. Don't hesitate. Just come down. I invite you to come down and just spend a few moments with the Father. You may say, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to pray. Listen, you just talk to him. Just as David wrote so many songs. You be real, you talk, you share what